Mhm. All right, good to see you all again on this Thursday during Black History Month. Yes, February. Continuing to honor Black History Month, I'm going to talk about this beautiful black woman, an American, a Catholic, on her way to sainthood, Julia Greeley. Yeah. Servant of God. Servant of God. Julia Greeley. Born around 1833. Whoops. 1833. Died in 1918. Yes. Hello, Mr. Doherty. How's it going? Well, Mr. Doherty, the palace signed someone I don't think they should sign, but seems like a nice guy. Norwegian, I think. 50 million bucks. Guy scored one goal in the whole season so far. Let's see what happens. How you doing, Mr. Doherty? Good. Well, great. All right, so Julia Greeley, servant of God. 1833, born in Missouri, the state of Missouri, which, as you probably can guess from the date of her birth, was she was born a slave. Missouri was a slave state, so she was born into slavery. She was known. Her nickname was One-Eyed Julia because when their slave master was whipping her mom at one time, apparently I don't know the whip slipped or I don't know his arm or something hit her in I guess the right eye, I think it was, and damaged it for life. So I guess she was blind in her right eye. So they called her One-Eyed Julia, which, kind of making fun of her disability, but okay. Making light of it. But nevertheless, so that kind of tells you of her upbringing, what she had to deal with as a young girl. Eventually, around 1879, so 1879-ish, Ms. Voles. Hello, Ms. Voles. 1879-ish, her family, or she moved, I should say, to the Colorado Territory, which became, or part of which became, the modern state of Colorado. But she moved to the Colorado Territory, where she worked as a cook and a nanny. I mean, how old she would have been then? It was 1880, roughly 80. So she was in her 50s, right? Okay. Anyway, help me out, people. I stink at math. Any math people here? Math camp? Mathletes? No? No? But nevertheless, I think she was certainly middle-aged. So she went to Colorado and worked as a cook and a nanny. She was not Catholic. I'd have to look up because she wasn't baptized. So I guess she was what her religious beliefs might have been. But anyways, in 1880 she was baptized as a Roman Catholic in the Colorado Territory, and she became a very devout woman, very devout. She would go around the streets, I guess, of Denver. I'm assuming it's the city of Denver. She would go around the streets pulling a wagon to distribute food, clothing to people, to poor families, coal. A lot of coal, I imagine, in Colorado, especially during the winter time, to help people out. She would give out little tracts and pamphlets about the Catholic Church and the Catholic faith to promote her beliefs. And she was known as, trigger warning, the Colored Angel of Charity. The Colored Angel of Charity. Or I guess today we would say the Angel of Color of Charity. But I don't know. Would someone tell me the rules, please? So when I was growing up, it was bad to say, I don't know anymore. By the way, is it still okay to call, if I see any of you female students who are coming into class and say, hello, ladies, and stuff, am I still allowed to do that? Or is that inappropriate to say ladies? Is that offensive? I don't know. You don't think so? Okay. All right, I just want to know. Because I don't know anymore. I don't know. So I got to keep asking. don't want to offend anybody. I'm a man of my times. I was born in the 70s. In the 70s, it was Afro-American. Then it became black. Then it became African American. Then it's back to black. Now it's people of color. I don't know. I don't want to offend anybody. So she was the colored angel of charity. So she was known. People recognized her. However, she pulled her. Oh, and she was arthritic too. So she suffered from arthritis, and yet she's pulling around this wagon around the city. So she was in pain doing it. But she did it at night and in the evenings. She didn't do it in the daylight because, some of the families that she helped out were white. And they were embarrassed to get help from a black person. So to kind of respect that, I guess, she said, okay, I'll come around at nighttime so no one will see that this holy little black lady is helping you out. They'd still take the free stuff, Mr. Frank, because, free is free. Yeah, they'd still take the free stuff from this beautiful black woman, but they just didn't want to acknowledge that they were getting it from a black woman. Anyway, so she's a servant of God. I'm assuming the Archdiocese of Denver opened up her cause, and that's it. She's at the beginning stages. Unfortunately, I hope she would move beyond that. I hope she will move beyond that more quickly. But at this stage, she's servant of God. So I ask servant of God, Julia, please pray for us in this class. Amen. Okay. Now, the last class, I mentioned I had a video on my computer about Hinduism and about how they transmit orally their scriptures. And I found it. It's not very long. It's about 4 minutes. A little over 4 minutes. So I'll play that for you. Watch that for a minute. Hopefully you'll find it interesting enough.
The Hindu Vedas comprise a vast corpus of Sanskrit poetry, philosophical dialogue, myth, and ritual incantations that were developed and composed in India by the Aryans 3,500 years ago. Regarded by Hindus as the primary source of knowledge and the sacred foundation of their religion, the Vedas embody one of the world's oldest surviving cultural traditions. Veda is derived from the Sanskrit word Ved, meaning knowledge. The Vedic heritage embraces a multitude of texts and interpretations that are collected in 4 Vedas, commonly referred to as books of knowledge, even though they've been transmitted orally. Veda is an anthology of sacred hymns. The Sama Veda features musical arrangements of hymns from the Rig Veda and other sources. The Yajur Veda abounds in prayers and sacrificial formulae used by priests. And the Atharva Veda includes incantations and spells. Does also provide an extraordinary historical panorama of Hinduism and offer insight into the early development of several fundamental artistic, scientific, and philosophical notions, such as the concept of zero. Expressed in the elegant Vedic language, which derived from classical Sanskrit, the verses of the Vedas were traditionally chanted during sacred rituals and ceremonies and recited daily in Vedic communities. Although these texts were recorded in writing 15 centuries ago for reference purposes, their principal means of transmission has remained oral, even until today. The outstanding value of the Vedic tradition lies not only in the rich content of its oral literature, but also in the unique and ingenious techniques employed by the Brahmin priests in preserving the texts intact over thousands of years. To ensure that the sound of each word remains unaltered, Practitioners are taught complex recitation techniques from childhood. These age-old techniques are based on specific speech combinations and tonal accents, which are unique ways of pronouncing each letter. In order to memorize the vast corpus of Vedic charts, the ancient prophets put together techniques for recitation by using extremely precise combinations of sounds. There are 8 models of pronunciation for Vedic charts. Here is one of them, Jatapata. 2 words repeated the right way round, and then backwards. With Jatapata, every syllable is repeated 6 times. Interesting. I hope you found it interesting. I mean, they're using basically mnemonic, well, not mnemonic devices, but they're using sound, and also you can see gestures and stuff like that, which all kind of like ingrain the text into your head. And remember, these are texts that are passed on, that are over 2,000, maybe 3,000 years old. They've been doing this, and they passed them on pretty accurately, it seems, because we do have written. They started writing down the Vedas, which we'll get to in a moment. Let me just find it in my notes. And when we study Islam, I'll come back to this idea because they do that in Islam. Anyone, I don't know if I have any Muslim students. If you want to self-identify, I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot, but it's helpful because you're the expert. But they have, what is it called? Hafiz, I think is the word. But anyways, for people who memorize the whole Quran, and even when you as a Muslim, even if you don't memorize the whole Quran, when you read the Quran, you really sing and chant the Quran. You never really read it. Okay, it has to be really kind of chanted and sung, but it has to be done in a certain way. Just like that's why they have to learn the Vedic chants in a certain way, because they were usually mostly performed during the sacrifice. And if you screwed up the words, then you screwed up the sacrifice, and means you pissed off the god. But you also caused disorder in the Dharma, in the foundation of the universe. Okay? Yes, he does. So you had to get it right. Ms. Morris. So yeah, even though they're types of Hindu scripture, which means writing, scriptura in Latin, from the Latin word scribo, Miss Kepner. Yes, scribo. Scribo, Miss Moore. Yes. You want to take Spanish in school? Escribir. Yes. Hello, Miss Womble. Scribo. Escribir in Spanish, which means to write. Yes. So escritura is something that is written, even though really they're passed on by word of mouth, but they were eventually written down
because the scriptures became, I think, too complicated and too large for anyone to really remember everything. Although you can see that even in modern times, they're still trying, and they have done a relatively good job, I would say, passing them on. There are two types, or two levels of Hindu sacred writings, or we could just say revelation in general, Mr. Frank, is Shruti and Smriti. What's that? Potato chips? Potato chips? Plain or are they?
Salt
Oh, salt and vinegar. A little bit of a kick, eh, Mr. Frank? Nice. Shruti is a Sanskrit word which means something that is heard. Remember, Ms. Perez, that for Hinduism, it's not really a revelation where like a god tells you something. You hear the sound of the universe. It's like a noise. So what is heard? You hear the sound of the universe. Shruti. And Smriti is remembrance, memory. What is remembered? What people remember of whatever, ancient times or other stuff. Okay? But Shruti is the highest level of revelation, and Smriti is the next level. So what do I want to say about this? Well, I already told you that. Shruti, yes, you can see from the definition. The divine and sacred truth of the universe, which has been given directly to these ancient seers. Rishis is the word they use, which simply means a seer. You know, someone who sees into, not really seeing the future. A seer is someone who sees the universe as it actually is, I think. That's what they're getting at there. Kind of visionaries. And they're the ones who wrote the hymns of the Vedic scriptures. Mainly, a lot of it is hymns, hymnography, writing down songs to the various gods. Okay? And these rishis are able to not just to have the vision of the universe, but to understand this Sanatana Dharma, this eternal knowledge, divine knowledge too. It's not a god, but it's god-like knowledge of the universe. And so the rishis are known for their great wisdom. They have great magical abilities and stuff like. Oh, they can do all sorts of supernatural things. They're almost like Hindu superheroes. They fly through the air. They jump over mountains. They can fast for years on end without not eating something for years on end. Blah 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 blah. Work nature miracles. But they're also known as kind of angry guys. Don't piss them off. They have a short fuse. Some of them. Anyways, you don't mess with the rishis, Mr. Zelke. And then we have Smriti, which I guess I'll. No, actually, I won't. I'll come back to Smriti when I get to the Smriti, I guess. But I will talk about the definition. It's more indirect. Okay, the rishis have a direct intuition of the truth of the universe, but Smriti is not direct. Okay, it's indirect. Okay, of the truth of the universe. So how would I describe that? Well, maybe it could be people thinking about the Shruti revelation or telling stories about the gods in the Shruti revelation. Okay, or they weren't eyewitnesses. Usually, to be Shruti, like the highest level, you want an eyewitness, the actual writer of the hymn or whatever. And Smriti, sometimes maybe you don't know who wrote something, but anyways, but that's big. The Shruti is divided up into 4 collections of texts. So the scriptures or the sacred writings in Hinduism are quite extensive, quite large. Okay, and obviously I'm not going over all of them, but I'm giving you the main ones, the basic ones. The 4 parts to the Shruti are first the Vedas that the guy mentioned. The Vedas, plural, this is more than one. The Brahmanas, each of which is attached to one of the Vedas. So each of the Vedas has its own Brahmana text. So there's more than one. The Aranyakas, or the Aranyaks, as it can also be pronounced, which also is attached to some of the Vedas. So there are more than one. And then this separate group of work called the Upanishads, which kind of are the end of the Vedas in a manner of speaking. the Upanishads, which are philosophical lectures that have been collected. To boil it down, make it very simple, Mr. Lakowitz, basically the Shruti are the Vedas, the 4 Vedas. Everything kind of revolves around the Vedic literature, which, as our friend on the video mentioned, comes from the Aryans. Okay, it's written in the language of what they believe to be the Aryans, which is a classical Sanskrit or Sanskrit. It was not native to India, apparently. The Aryans brought these gods with them and their hymns with them, and then kind of integrated with the local religion that was there. Okay, they kind of added their stuff. Now, this is highly controversial in India, so be careful. If you're ever traveling in India or whatever, don't bring up the Aryan migration or tell someone that, oh yeah, I know, I learned in class that the Vedas came from the Aryans and then they mixed it in with native, because you'll get into a fight. You just don't, stay away from it. It's still very controversial, even though that's what religious studies scholars think historically happened. Just it's seen, and I'm not from India. I've never been to India. I wish I could visit there, but they try to get jobs there, teaching in the Catholic schools. It's very difficult to break into. Very, very hard to get a visa and stuff if you're a foreigner, a non-Indian. But anyways, so that's the way it is. But from what I've heard from people on this issue, is just that, a lot of people in India are very touchy about any suggestion that anything could have come out from outside to them. They like to believe that everything kind of originated in Mother India. Okay, I want to believe that, fine. I'm not going to rock the boat. But I will tell you what most scholars think. The Vedas came from outside with the Aryans and their religion. And then, there was a mixture, an admixture with probably the native religion that was there. Seems to have been. So the Vedas. Start with the Vedas. As our friend told us on the video, Sanskrit, that's my abbreviation for Sanskrit. Veda, which means knowledge. Okay? Related to our word wisdom, Ms. Perfield. Yes? Wisdom. Yeah? Very similar. Which also means knowledge. Means the same thing, knowledge. Wisdom. Okay? Veda. Right? We're Indo-European language family. Thank you very much. So, knowledge, that's kind of what, Hinduism is about. Knowledge. Not every religion is about the same thing. It's something you need to, maybe one thing you can take away from a world religions class is that not every religion is about the same thing. A lot of people come in, because we're in a Christian milieu, even if you don't believe in Christianity, people come in thinking religion's about being saved, freed from your sins, or the devil, or evil, whatever. No, not all religions are like that. I mean, Hinduism's not like that. It's more knowledge, gaining proper knowledge about how the universe is. And then by having proper knowledge, you can be liberated from the cycle of death and rebirth and not be reborn. Just go into the divine reality that is the Dharma, or is the foundation of the cosmos. So this was oral poetry, spoken poetry, written down sometime around the 1200s BC, between the 1200s BC and the 600s BC. As you said in the video, 1500 centuries ago. So that's roughly, 500 BC, I guess. So yeah, it's in the ballpark, 1200 to 600 BC. The focus of the Vedas is almost exclusively on the correct, proper performance of sacrifice. The Aryans apparently were big on sacrifice, especially of horses. They like to sacrifice horses for some reason. But they were big on the sacrifice because the sacrifice was like a microcosm of the cosmos, the macrocosm. And so, by properly performing the sacrifice, you kind of tap into the cosmos, right? And it was restricted to high caste male. That's another thing. The Aryans seem to have had a structured society of a caste system. We had people on the top and people on the bottom. People on the top were like the priests, of course. Remember, because the Mithragia, the sacrifice had to be done properly, right? So the priests are at the top, since they knew how. Then you had the people who protected the community, who fought for it, the warriors, the rulers, and governed it, rulers. Then you had people below that, like businessmen, merchants, and then finally, I guess, artisans, tradesmen, people like that. We're at the bottom. But only the upper castes could read and learn the Vedas. So the top three, the priests definitely, obviously, the warriors and rulers, the merchants class, but not the plumbers or the electricians. The tradesmen or the artisans. So all you people who like to make pottery, or people who are like bakers, bakers and chefs. No, sorry, you can't learn the Vedas. You're at the bottom caste. According to legend, all of the Vedas apparently were revealed to the Rishi Vyasa. All of the Vedas, the complete Veda was revealed to Vyasa, and then eventually was divided into four. But that was, in the beginning, in the perfect period of time, there was only one Veda. Okay. But now there are four. Why? Because we are in a less perfect period of time. We are in the age of disorder. We're actually in the final age. Where the end of this time period. Well, the end of this time period is destruction of the whole cosmos until it begins again. But we are in the final age. If you wanted to know, Miss Free-J. Aren't you lucky? Aren't we both lucky? But don't worry. It goes on for billions of years before it gets destroyed. But in the first age, the perfect age, there was one Veda given to Vyasa who passed them on. I think I mentioned this in the last class, but I'll just mention it again. I mentioned the castes, only the higher caste, but also males of the higher castes. Okay, females were not ever allowed to read the Vedas or study them. Of course, now they can, obviously. They shouldn't. If you're a traditional conservative Hindu, they should not. And I would imagine you would not teach them to a female of any caste. But, she has the internet. Then who's going to stop her, Miss Malatesta? You? You're going to tell a woman she can't do something? Can't read the Vedas. Oh, I can I? Where's that Google? But if she's a faithful Hindu, maybe she won't. She'll respect that. I don't know. So the one Veda is divided into 4 collections. Samhitas. Did I put that in the... Yeah, the 4 Samhitas. Samhita is a collection. So sometimes you'll see it all as one word. Rig Veda Samhita, Yajur Veda Samhita, Sama Veda Samhita, blah, 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 blah. Okay? Just means a collection. All right? It's just they're just using the Sanskrit word for collection. You don't have to. But, Ms. Bowles, I want to impress you and earn my bones. Rig, Yajur, Sama, and Atharva. Start with the Rig. And of all the Vedas, I guess you would say the Rig is the most important. Not just because it comes first. But actually the first 3 are the most important and probably the most original of the Vedas. In Sanskrit, it comes from the Sanskrit word rik, which means praise or verses. Okay? And that's kind of like what it is. It's a collection of hymns. It's a hymn book. So verses of the hymns. Right there with you, Mr. Steve. God bless you. So Rig Veda Samhita. In English, we could translate that as the collection of the knowledge of praise, or the knowledge of hymns, one might say. Knowledge of the verses. Okay? The hymns that are supposed to be sung during the sacrifice. And the Rig is considered the oldest of the Vedic scriptures, written down around 1200 BC. So I'm sure I did put this on the PowerPoint. No, I did not. Okay. That's fine. 1200 BC. Right on. Da, 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 da. And it is, as I said, it's a collection of hymns, over a little over 1,000 hymns, around 1,020, but I'll just say a little over 1,000, ballpark. We don't need to be specific, I guess, to various gods and goddesses. And if you look, and I think I give you a reading from one of the hymns from the Vedas. I give you one that's actually not to any god, but usually if you look in a collection of the Vedas, up on the left or the right top hand of the hymn, it will tell you which god it's dedicated to. Agni, Rudra, Indra, whatever. So you'll know what the hymn is supposed to be, who it's supposed to be about. And it's a collection of 10 books, 10 books of hymns. The core books are probably books 2 to 7, are the oldest part. So if you want the oldest of the oldest, 2 to 7 of the Rig Veda, and everything else seems to have been later added on, So book 3, 8, and 9, and scholars think that probably the latest books to be added on were books 1 and 10, the first and the last. I guess that would make sense, Books 1 and 10 were the latest. And as I said, it's arranged in order or according to the gods who are addressed. The most addressed god, which you might not be surprised, is Indra. Indra. Kind of sounds like India, right? I don't know if it's related, but it just sounds like, sounds appropriate to me, Ms. Baird, right? Ms. Baird. Sounds appropriate, doesn't it? Indra. Indra was the supreme god of the Aryans, so like the highest of the gods for the Aryans, the bringer of rain, so I guess like a storm god of something. After Indra, then Agni, the god of fire, and that's directly related to the sacrifice, because as you saw them burning things, right? Fire is a big part of Hindu sacrifice. Okay, you burn stuff up, fire. So Agni. Anyone take Latin in school at all? Anyone look it up online? Just curious. Latin language. Miss Baird, really? Oh, in high school. Oh, what high school did you go to? Oh, Archbishop Ryan. So that kind of tells me. Catholic school. They actually had Latin. Was it required or what? Okay. So it was required, but you had to choose. Did you take a modern language as well? Just Latin. Ooh. Did you choose to take Latin? You had to take it. Interesting. So they had Greek as well. Too bad. But good Latin. Yes. So there you go. That's always there. Oh, what's the word for fire in Latin? What's the word for fire? You don't know? Don't remember? Well, you do know it. I mean, it's in English too. We have it in English. Fire is the German from Feuer, Germanic fire, but we have the Latin too in English. If you want to set something on fire, what do you do? You set something on fire. Well, when you get into the car, you put a key in, you turned it, and now you press the button. What happens? Activating the ignition. Ignition. You ignite something. You set it on fire. Ignis. Mr. Lackowitz in Latin. Ignis. Sound familiar? Sound familiar? Sound like the word you just heard? Which word? True, sir. God bless you. Mr. Christmas. Is that Ignis? Does that sound like the word you just heard? Yes. What is it? Ignition. God bless you, sir. All right. Maybe the name of a god or a goddess. A certain god. God fire, Ignis, God. It's passive aggression. I know. This Womble, do you think you know? Oh, dear. Dear Lord. All right. Agni! Agni! I just told you Agni, didn't I, Mr. Kedner? The god of fire. After Indra, the next most common hymn is to the god of fire, Agni. Ignis in Latin. Same language family, so they're similar. Yeah? Ah, yes. Now, that's the Rig Veda. The next one is the Yajur Veda. Yajur, from Yajus, which means the sacrificial formula, the mantra. The mantra. Yes, Ms. Perfield, mantras always make me laugh. I think of sacrificial formula. So the Yajur Veda, Samhita, would be the collection of knowledge of the sacrifice. I guess you could say if you wanted to, if you wanted to paraphrase it, like the handbook of sacrifice or something like that. Okay, but anyway, sacrificial formula. So all the mantras that the priests are supposed to say or can say are in this manual, the prayers and the formulae used by the priest. And also there are some explanations of ritual thrown in as well. A mantra is very big to know proper formulae and phrases to use. Okay, again, that's very, and they have to be said properly because power is in the syllables. There's cosmic power in the very syllables, almost like magic. It's magical in that sense. So by knowing the proper mantra and saying it correctly in the proper context of the sacrifice, you're kind of controlling the universe. Don't worry about that. I'll move on. Sama. Sama in Sanskrit means a chant or a melody or the tune. You got the hymns. You got to know how to sing them. You've got the sheet of music, but, you got the words for the music. Let's put it that way. But you also need the sheet of music to tell you, tempo and time and, how the tune should be, the melody for the song. So Saman, chant or melody. So knowledge of the chants. And so it has the songs and the melodies used in the sacrifice. I wrote that down, but it doesn't matter. Basically, if it is basically it follows the Rig Veda. It's basically a repeat. The Sama is pretty much a repeat of the Rig, which would make sense. The Rig is the actual words of the songs, and then the Sama is, well, again, the words of the songs. It's kind of look exactly like the Rig. And then I guess someone would write the tunes there somewhere. But anyways, I guess that's how it works. But nevertheless, if you actually look at it, it seems to be like a repeat of the Rig Veda. But it is somewhat different in some ways. Some of the verses are rearranged. Okay, in the Sama, some of the verses of the hymns are rearranged, different orders. And let's see here. According to my notes, about 75 hymns are not found in the Veda. Yeah, about 75 hymns are lacking in the Sama that are in the Rig Veda for whatever reason. Maybe they were included in the original Rig, or maybe they just didn't get carried over for some reason. Okay, to know, it's not just that you know the words that you're supposed to say, but was it Rig? Did I say Rig too much? You need to know the pitch and the tone, even the melody, the way you sing the mantra. from that you derive creative power. And then finally we come to the Atharva. The Rig, the Yajur, and the Sama, these first three are the most basic. That's why they're in the same color, bold, okay, and all caps, because they're called the threefold knowledge, the Trayi Vidya. The Trayi Vidya. Trayi, three, right? Three. Trayi. Vidya, Vidya means knowledge. So the threefold knowledge, because they're probably the more original. And then they added on the last one called the Atharva, which is considered the lowest of the Vedas. I guess the lowest in authority. Okay? Because the Atharva really doesn't have a lot to do directly with sacrifice and the performance of the sacrifices. And so because it didn't really have any clear connection to what was going on in the threefold Veda, which was all about the performance of the sacrifice, proper performance, I should say, it was denied status as a Veda, historically, originally not considered part of the Vedas. How? Well, you say, but Dr. Dunn, there it is on the PowerPoint slide, right, Ms. Wolf? How did it get there? How did it get to be considered part of the Vedas? Well, we're not sure. It's not exactly clear. But what they just give you I'm looking at my notes here, to give you the long and the short of the story, just to boil it down. Basically, some group compiled a collection of the Vedas and added the Atharva onto it and said, this has always been part of the Vedas, basically. Okay. Some group, this was their text, okay, and they just wanted to make it part of the Vedas, so they just said it always was. And whenever they published the Vedas, they always published it together, and just, I guess, as the saying goes, when you repeat something over and over again, people just assume it's correct, and that's kind of like what happened. People just said, okay, yeah, it is part of the Vedas, even though originally, historically, it probably was not. Also, Atharva is the name of the father of fire. Not the god of fire, apparently the father of fire, because he's the one who brought fire, I guess, to humans. Atharva is the one who introduced fire worship. Atharva. So kind of like, what is it, Prometheus in the Greek myths? Isn't it Prometheus who brings the story that tells about him bringing fire to human beings, takes it from the gods. Only the gods have access to fire. He brings it to human beings, and that pisses off Zeus. I forget what Zeus does to him to punish him. But anyway, ring a bell. Is Lisinski in it? No. I don't. I just, really about 30% I just make up. Because what's the point? I just make it up. 70% of what I tell you is true and accurate. But then 30% I kind of just ramble and make stuff up because it's just funny. Yes. Anyways, so they also, not only did they just add it on, but they also attributed it to a famous person, Atharva, the one who brought us the fire sacrifice, the practice of the fire sacrifice. So this is the knowledge of Atharva, the knowledge of the fire sacrifice. So that kind of helped grease its way, one might say, into acceptance amongst Hindus. But what is it, the Atharva? Do I give you a reading from the Atharva? Or do I just put it on the PowerPoint? I forget. Mr. Sinsky, do I give you a reading from the Atharva or just the Rig Veda? Okay, good. Thank you, Mr. Sinsky. But I do have it here on the PowerPoint. What is in the Atharva? Well, it's charms, really, if you look at it. Charms, curses, hymns, songs to the gods, asking for healing, or also to kind of inflict injury. So in a way, you could say it's kind of like a kind of white magic, black magic book. In some cases, you want good things to happen to you and to others. In other cases, you want bad things to happen to others. I don't think, Ms. Moralia, people are usually want black magic spells to harm themselves, right? It's usually another person that you want to harm with black magic. So that's kind of like what the Atharva is. I'm trying to remember if we did this were a religious studies course. Truly, anthropologists call these, I think, periodic rituals. I think they're called period or life crisis rituals when you have a need. Okay. Anyways, but there's also some philosophical speculation in the Atharva, and it's all mixed together. Okay. So this is an example from the fourth book of the Atharva Veda, fourth book, number 6, doesn't whatever. And would anyone like to read this from the Atharva? I got you, miss. Put someone else on the grill. I got you. Okay. Well, no, I had you too, Mr. Selden. You've read some stuff, right? Yeah. You don't have to be the same people all the time. You got to gain those class participation points. Yeah. I'm trying to help you out. Miss 3J. No, Miss 3J. Miss Herfield. Go ahead. Thank you.
From your head to your feet, I implant love song into you. O God, send forth the yearning love. May yonder man burn for me. Favor this plan. Henneman, sit it together.
Good.
O God, send forth the yearning love. May yonder man burn for me. If you run 3 leagues away, 5 leagues, distance coursed by a horseman, from there you shall again return. Shall be the father of our sons.
Oh, interesting. All right, so this is a charm. If you're a single Hindu woman, and I guess you're having some problems finding a man, or there's a certain man that you do have feelings for, and you want him to be sexual, well, I should say sexually aroused, but simply aroused to love for you, then there's this charm. And I don't know what you do with the charm. There might be something that, I don't know, not just say the prayer, but sometimes you have to do certain things, like you say the prayer when it's the first moon of the month, while, I don't know, eating a mango and stuff like that. But, sorry, don't leave that. How do you do it? I'm 53 years old. Once a lot of 20s. Here I am. Keeping it together, Mr. Frank. Anyways, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so yeah, I mean, there might be some other rituals that have to go along with this prayer, but nevertheless, okay, so I'm assuming you need visual contact with the woman would need visual contact with the man that she's interested in, if she's talking directly about him. From your whole body, head to your feet, I implant love into you. Gods, make him love me, make him burn for me. And she invokes someone like Hanuman, who's a monkey god, meaning, a god who looks like a monkey. Akuti is a female goddess. I have it written down. I think she's one of the daughters of Brahma. Let's see what my notes say. Yeah, she's daughter of Brahma, the god Brahma, about whom we will learn some other time. So she's asking these two this god and goddess, to help her in her plan, to make the man love her. And no matter how far away he goes, 3 miles, 4 miles, 5 miles, very far away, he will come back and be the father of my son. So there's a little bit of sexual arousal. She wants to have sex with him, so we'll raise up children for her. But notice, sons, not girls. Because that's what you're supposed to do. As a Hindu man, when you become a householder at that stage of life, you get a wife, and hopefully your first child will be a son. But definitely you're supposed to raise up sons to your parents. That's how you honor them. What about daughters? Well, if they come, they come. You know, it so happens you have a daughter. You know, great. But you really want sons. Because it's the son who's obligated to take care of the parents in their old age. Okay, so you... All right. The Brahmanas and the Aranyakas. The Brahmanas are books regarding sacred power. Brahman, as we'll learn later, I'll talk about Brahman, which is this divine power of the universe. The divine power, not a god, it's simply the divine power which underlies the whole cosmos. So sacred power. The Brahmanas were written sometime between 1000 BC to 650. 1000 to 650. And these are ritual books with detailed instructions about the sacrifices. Okay, so whereas the Vedas, I guess, contain the bones of the sacrifice, the hymns you're supposed to sing to the gods, the Brahmanas explain more what you're supposed to do. Okay, they're basically commentaries on the Vedas about the sacrifice, and the Brahmanas explain the Brahman, or the sacred power that lies behind the formulae that are used in the rituals. Why do we say this? This is why. Why do we say it this way? This is why, because this is what it does. Okay, so they're explaining that. And each of the Vedas has a Brahmana text. So there's the Rig Brahmana, a Brahmana connected to the Rig, one connected to the Yajur, to the Sama, and the Atharva. The Aranyakas, or the Aranyaks, means literally of the forest, or as it's traditionally translated, the forest meditations, Ms. Kepner. The forest meditations. Ms. Kepner. No. I thought so. Oh well. My mistake. Forget that, Ms. Kepner. Oh, Ms. Baird, field hockey, right? Is field hockey starting this spring, or is it the fall? It's in the fall? Basketball, too? Basketball's in the fall, and those spring basketballs? No? Softball? Huh? You're in softball? Oh, I thought so. You already started. How are we doing? What's our record? Oh, you started practicing. Okay. All right, interesting. What position are you? Second base? Ooh, interesting. Very nice. So, of the forest meditations, written around, whoops, I didn't put that on the PowerPoint, maybe around 1000 BC, maybe 1000 BC. And what are they? Why are they called of the forest, or forest meditations? Because they were apparently talks or lectures given by a teacher in the forest, secretly, secret teaching. Okay, because why in the forest? Because it was considered inappropriate for common knowledge. So you go off into the countryside in the forest where there are few people or no people. This is not something you would proclaim in the city square. You go out to the forest, and that's where you talk about the secret stuff, stuff that maybe most people shouldn't know. And the Aranyakas developed in combination with the Brahmanas. And so just like the Brahmanas, each Veda has an Aranyaka, except the Atharva. Ooh, that's interesting.
Can you go back? Say that last part.
Yes. Each of the Vedas has an Aranyaka text, a text of secret teaching about each one, except the Atharva, which is interesting. Because, again, it might indicate to scholars the lateness of the Atharva, that the Atharva came later to the collection. because it doesn't even have an Aranyaka text attached to it. But the Rig, the Yajur, and the Sama do. So what's going on in the Aranyakas? Well, as I said, secret knowledge. It's very speculative, might say philosophical or mystical, I guess. And it kind of theorizes about the sacrifice, what the actions of the sacrifice really mean. Maybe that's why it was dangerous. People might, the takeaway, Mr. Ladis might be, well, the sacrifice is just all symbolic. It doesn't do anything, you know? Because it spiritualizes everything, so that every action of the sacrifice is a symbol of something else. So maybe that's why it was dangerous. Anyways, that's, the Aranyakas. And now finally we come to the Upanishads. I believe I give you a reading from a few of the Upanishads, yes? I think so. Or no, is it? Maybe I don't give you the Upanishads. I know I give you the Gita, right? From the Gita, Bhagavad Gita. I think so. Now, I forget if I did the Upanishads. Well, yeah, because the parable of Udalaka. Oh, okay. How do you know that? Huh? Really? You did that? God bless you. Thanks. Thanks. Have you read it yet, just out of curiosity?
I'm reading it tonight.
Ooh.
Okay.
She wrote it down. Trying to do this. Thank you. So the Upanishads, what are we talking about? Oh yeah, Upanishad, to sit down nearby is what it means in Sanskrit. The students sitting down in front of the guru. And that's what the Upanishads basically are. If you read them, if and when you read them, they're the discussion, they're stories or relations of a guru sitting there teaching his students. He's talking to the student's asking questions, or really answering the questions, I should say, in the Upanishads. So they're basically class lectures, I guess, if you want to say, class lectures. Oh, that's the guru. That doesn't matter. Yeah, move on. The Upanishads were written, here you have the dates, sometime around, I have in my notes 700 to 300 BC. I'm not sure if that's more accurate or this is 600 BC on the PowerPoint, actually. So I won't hold it to you if I ask a question on the quiz. I won't ask a question on the quiz. But, just give you a rough. So okay, so let's split the difference and say the 600s-ish BC. 600s BC, okay? The Upanishads were compiled. There are many, many Upanishads. Many, many more than are actually in the official collection. It was only later that I write his name down. I don't know if I wrote his name down. Well, anyways, there was a later famous Hindu scholar who actually collected like the best of the Upanishads and put them into the standard collection. There are many, many of them. And what's going on in the Upanishads is it's a discussion of the relationship of the individual self, or Mr. Lakowitz, you could say the soul. That's a Western term. That's not, but to help you understand, the soul's relationship to the source of existence, the ultimate ground of existence, which again is Brahman, which is not a god, but basically realizing that you are Brahman and Brahman is you. So you are a divine being in a manner of speaking. You are divine being, I should say, because Brahman is not a god. So you are divine being. You are really as much of a god as any of the Hindu gods and goddesses. How do you know this? How do you realize this? Well, all sorts of ways. Yogic practice, meditation, blah, 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 other things. But that's the whole point of these talks. And it kind of brings Hindu theology to to an end in a way. The Vedic tradition is considered to end with the Upanishadic literature. Okay, it's like the ultimate interpretation of what's going on in the Vedas. Hence, the Upanishads. Let me see if I put this. I did. Okay. Hence, the Upanishads are actually part of another group of literature, which I guess I'm just going to mention, called the Vedanta, the end of the Vedas. Okay, the Upanishads are so good, so influential that they're taken out of this group of literature and made part of the Shruti. Then you have the Smriti literature here called the Bhagavad Gita and the Brahma, which is not even its own work; it's part of a larger work, and the Brahma Sutra, which is a little commentary text apparently related to the god Brahma, so the Brahma Sutra. So these three works, the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, and the Brahma Sutra, which all basically center and revolve around this whole idea that ultimate reality is you, and you are ultimate reality, and the purpose is to come to that realization. Okay, to come to the realization that Brahman is you, and you are Brahman. Okay, that this divine power, sacred power that underlies the universe is in everything, including you. So it is you. If it's in you, I don't want to say anything more about that. I will come back to the Gita, but the Brahma Sutra I don't really. Other than knowing that the Brahma Sutra is part of the Vedanta, I wouldn't worry about it. Okay, but and know that they're all kind of teaching the same kind of idea, which maybe I put on the next PowerPoint. Yeah, there we go. Atman, Advaita, and Maya. Okay, three very essential ideas to the Vedanta um, teaching and view of the universe, and also very central to Hinduism. Okay, first, the Atman is what Europeans interpreted as and translated the word Atman as soul. Okay, just to make it understandable to the Western mind, but it's really not the soul. It's your personal self, or if I say your individual self, or your person might be a better translation for Atman. Okay, it's this spiritual thing, you might say, that continues through the cycle of death and rebirth. The material world is an illusion, is Maya. Okay, the physical world. Hinduism is very well, we say Gnostic in the Western world. Okay, but we don't know what that means unless you do philosophy. But there are movements. You find this in just every culture. You find groups like this in Western civilization and also Eastern civilization. There are groups of people who think that the spirit is all that matters. No, not the material world. The material world is changeable, right? It decays. It's never the same. It's always in movement, in motion, and it dies. It corrupts, and eventually matter breaks apart, which we call death. Breaks down. But it can also be reformed. But that just means it's not permanent, right? Because it's never the same. It breaks down, but then, like with reincarnation, if you believe in that, Hindus do, it just gets reformed again. So it's not permanent. So where's the permanence? What's the thing that's permanently going through the cycle, that's being reborn? The Atman. Yeah. And then how the Atman appears in the different cycles is the illusion, whatever the illusion is. I'm now a man, okay, in this cycle, okay, but let's say I build up a lot of bad karma, I do a lot of evil things or whatever, and have a lot of bad baggage, and then in the cycle of death and rebirth, I might come back as a demon or something, or an insect, or some lower form of life, you know. And I would have to live out that, you know. I would have to go through that until that cycle was over with. And if I were a really good cockroach, you know, I was as cockroach as a cockroach ought to be, which meant I had good karma. Then in the next cycle, I'll move up. Maybe I'll move up to, I don't know, a dog or something. Yeah. And I just have to go. That's why, not a lot of bad karma, man. You can go really down the totem pole, and you have to work your way back up over a bunch of cycles. But anyway, you don't want to do that. So it's all illusion, you know. The physical world, and it's not just me, my body, but the physical world is illusory. It's not real in a sense. It's not permanent. All that's permanent is myself, which is divine because it is part of Brahman, which underlies everything. And since Brahman is godlike, then everything is godlike. The trees, the rocks, this building, and of course us. So there's no differentiation. There's no, what you might call duality. Duality. Dvaita. Not two, right? It's like agnostic, not knowing. Or what else do we use? Agnostic, I think would be something else. Now, forget, you know what I'm talking about. And two, doulos, right, Ms. Baird? Doulos. Doulos. In Latin. Dvaita, two. We are not two. It's monism. Mono means one, yes? Mono. Not that you've got mono, that's something else. All right? But if it's like, or, mano a mano, that's another language. You're mono, and you're alone. It's only you, okay? So, Hinduism is monistic. God bless you. Right there with it's monistic. There's only one reality. The self and the ultimate source of reality, Brahman, are the same. They are not two. So that's what the Vedantic literature is preaching. And what I'd say a good portion of Hindus believe, of whatever stripe, whatever god or goddess they worship. There are different philosophies within Hinduism as well, but this really has pretty much taken over Hinduism. The fact that, we are not two, we are one with Brahman, that the Atman, the permanent self, is Brahman, and also that the Atman is what continues throughout the cycle of reincarnation, and that everything else, like your physical body, whatever you are, your mind, these are just illusions. Okay. So we go to the parable of Uddalaka. Part of it, because there's more to it. This guy, what's his name? Shvetaketu. This guy, Uddalaka, the guru, and he's talking to his student, his son, his student. So they're like in a father-son relationship as guru and student. I don't do that in this class because I don't want to take any of you home with me. I'm just saying, because if I start calling you my son, my daughter, then you might think that you can crash, and it's like I only got one couch, that's for the cat to sleep on. What, too far, Mr. Lockman? It's too. Uddalaka. Shvetaketu is talking with his son, wink, wink, Shvetaketu. Who would like to read this little snippet from the Upanishads? Chandogya Upanishad. There are many Upanishads. But this one, where Uddalaka is talking to Shvetaketu. Mr. Kettner?
fetch me a fruit of the Yagroda?
Yeah, that's fine. Yagroda. Whoa! Keep going.
Here is one, sir. Break it. It is broken, sir. What do you see there? These seeds, almost extremely small. Break one of them. It is broken, sir. What do you see there? Not anything, sir. The father said, my son, that fine essence which you do not perceive there, of that very essence this great Negroda tree exists. Believe it, my son, that which is the fine essence, and it all that exists has itself. It is the truth. It is the self, and you, O Shadika, are it.
Yes. Oh, okay. Tatvam asi. Tatvam asi in Sanskrit. Famous mantra. Tat, that, tvam, you are asi. Tvam, you check Spanish, tu, right? Tu. Or Latin, tu. Tu es, right? Right? Ms. Baird? Hoc tu es. Tat twamasi in Sanskrit. You are that. What's the point? And he gives all these examples. He gives another example. I think this might be in the reading, but that's not what I put on the PowerPoint. He talks about, if you pour a drop of honey into water, okay, that's kind of like how the Atman is with Brahman, with ultimate reality. You taste the water and it tastes sweet or salty, depending on whether he puts honey or salt in it. But how do you know where the salt ends and where the water begins? You don't. You just taste salty water or sweet water. It's like with this, when you break open the fruit. Okay, well, if you keep breaking it open and then get down even to the seeds of the fruit, we'll break them open and keep breaking them open. Well, what do you get to? What you get to is ultimate reality, the foundation. And how do you tell that you are? Just like you can't tell the difference between, the salt and salt water, or honey and sweet water, and vice versa. You can't. You have to come to the realization that you really can't tell the difference between you and Brahman. You are that. Brahman is me. I am Brahman. Brahman asmi is another great mantra. Okay? And these are the mantras that you say to yourself when you're stretching in yoga. Yoga is not, well, we do it. I should say we do it because I don't do it. But in the West, it's done for stretching purposes, not religious purposes. But if you're truly doing it for religious purposes, you're doing it while you're praying or saying these mantras to kind of end the pain of yoga, as opposed to help in distracting your mind away from rationality to the experience that you are it and it is you. O Shveta Ketu Ket. Yes. Have a good weekend. God bless you all. Have a good day, sir.
I
Yes.
was late because I was talking to Patrick McGreen.
Okay.
After class, we had another talk. So if you
Alright.
would like to email him, he said he'd be more than welcome to.
All right. I'll take your word for it and just make a note. Thank you. Have a good weekend. Have a good day, sir. Good day, miss. It's more. Have a good day, Ms. Womble. Oh, Ms. Womble. My microphone's on its way. Yes, it is. Walmart. Bye, Miss 3J. Bye, ladies. Have a good day. Bye, Miss Moralia. You too, miss. Thank you. You too. La, da, 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 da. Have a good day, sir. Good day, miss. Thank you, miss. Yes, he does, miss. Have a good day. All right, Ms. Dasinski. You too, miss. Have a good weekend.